Emily had babysat for the Johnsons countless times before. Their daughter, Lily, was a sweet 5-year-old who loved to play with her dollhouse and read bedtime stories. When Mrs. Johnson called to ask if Emily could babysit on a stormy Friday night, Emily didn't hesitate to agree. She arrived at their cozy suburban home just as the first raindrops began to fall. "Lily's already asleep," Mrs. Johnson said as she grabbed her coat. "If you need anything, just call us. We'll be back by midnight." Emily nodded and settled into the living room with a book, the sound of rain tapping against the windows creating a soothing backdrop. It wasn't long before she heard it, a soft, high-pitched whispering. She froze, straining to listen, but the sound stopped as suddenly as it had started. Dismissing it as the wind or the house settling, she returned to her book. An hour later, she heard it again. This time, it was unmistakable, a child's voice whispering indistinct words. Emily put her book down and cautiously made her way upstairs, the floorboards creaking under her feet. She pushed open Lily's door and peered inside. Lily was fast asleep, clutching her favorite doll, Missy. Emily sighed with relief and was about to leave when she heard the whispering again. It was coming from the doll. Emily's heart pounded in her chest as she leaned closer to Missy. The doll's glassy eyes seemed to gleam in the dim light, and its porcelain lips moved ever so slightly. "Help me," it whispered. Emily stumbled back, nearly tripping over a toy. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. She must be imagining things. Taking a deep breath, she reached out to pick up the doll. As soon as her fingers touched its cold porcelain skin, a wave of icy dread washed over her. "Help me," the doll repeated, louder this time. Emily dropped the doll, her hands shaking. She needed to call the Johnsons, but her phone was downstairs. She turned to leave, but the door slammed shut on its own. Panic surged through her as she fumbled with the doorknob, but it wouldn't budge. "Emily," the doll whispered, "please help me." Emily turned to see Lily sitting up in bed, her eyes wide with terror. "Missy says she wants to go home," Lily said in a small voice. What do you mean?" Emily stammered. "She used to belong to a little girl who lived here before us," Lily explained. "The girl died, and now Missy wants to be with her." Emily's blood ran cold. She remembered hearing about the tragic accident that claimed the life of a young girl in this house years ago. The thought of the doll being possessed by the girl's spirit was too horrifying to comprehend. "How do we help her?" Emily asked, her voice trembling. "Take her to the old oak tree in the backyard," Lily said. "That's where she used to play." With shaking hands, Emily picked up the doll and carried it downstairs. The rain had intensified, and thunder rumbled ominously as she stepped out into the backyard. The old oak tree stood tall and menacing, its branches swaying in the stormy wind. Emily approached the tree and placed the doll at its base. "Please, let this be enough," she whispered. Suddenly the wind howled, and the ground beneath the doll began to tremble. Emily watched in horror as the doll slowly sank into the earth, a final whisper escaping its lips. "Thank you." The storm seemed to ease as the doll disappeared completely. Emily stood there, drenched and shaken, but relieved that the ordeal was over. She returned to the house to find Lily back asleep, her face serene and peaceful. When the Johnsons came home, Emily didn't mention the doll or the whispers. She simply collected her things and left, vowing never to return. Years later, the Johnsons moved away, and the house stood empty once more. But on stormy nights, neighbors swore they could still hear a child's whisper carried on the wind, asking for help from the shadows beneath the old oak tree.